it.
What is up, brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Mitch Grace Show 2022 version. This is our first episode for the new year. And I have to say, I've said this for years now. I get excited about every show, especially when I have guests, because the guests we attract here are amazing human people. Their perceptions and perspectives on life are just incredible. And so we're starting off the new year with a bang. I've got on the show today a friend that we've built a relationship over the last couple of months. I was on his show that we'll talk about in a little bit as well a few months ago. Now he's on mine, Mr. Audley Stephenson. Welcome to the Mitch Grace Show, man.
This is awesome. I appreciate this. It's very cool to be on the other side of the mic, Mitch. It's very cool. And again, what a great way to bring in 2022.
Yes, I love it. We hope everyone had a great start to the new year. We're going to keep you inspired and take it where the conversation goes. So Audley, quickly, you are, first of all, the host of a great podcast, Best Audacious Life, and that's the website, bestaudaciouslife.com. You're actually professionally the vice president of operations for the National Basketball League of Canada, NBL Canada, as well as a podcaster, as we just said, who helps listeners live their best audacious life ever. Not just best audacious life
ever,
but ever. And I have to say, after following your content for a few months and checking out your website and listening to your other shows, I would say that if we followed you around with a camera for a week, every day, we would see the same theme come to the surface, brother. Yeah. So love it.
Yeah. So Mitch, I got to tell you, it's very important and was very important that I really live my brand, right? I'm not putting something out there that I don't believe in. I don't think it has any longevity if you take that approach. I don't think you have any real authenticity. I don't think you connect with people if you're not being real and not living it the way you talk about it. So I appreciate you for recognizing that. It's all real to me as far as how I live my life. It's funny. People who I've known, growing up as a child, they'll meet me and tell me, "You're the exact same person. You've just gotten older, obviously." But and to me, that's important, right? Because what that means is I am being true to myself, and I am being real to myself and being honest. And not that we don't evolve or grow, right, Mitch? Because life is meant to do that. But the core of who we are should never, ever change. And what we need to do, I think we should do, is look for as many opportunities as possible to put that real side of us out in the forefront so we all could see it.
Yeah, it's almost anti-social media culture, right? And I think that's really the dilemma, that especially those of us that are trying to build business, in Canada, you're in the public eye. You have been for many years with your position there. But it's almost anti-social media culture where we're not painting a pretty picture. And I find myself doing that. It's like, okay, how much blood and gore of life do we show? Because life gets that way. And what I mean by that is how much of the reality. But the bottom line is, man, and you just identified it, other humans relate and connect to the sincere human story. The fakeness isn't sustainable. And that's exactly what you're saying.
You can. You're absolutely. You can sustain it, and that's a really interesting question to ask. How much of yourself do you put out there? And it's something that I struggle with sometimes. Where you're in the middle of something. I want to do. No, I don't need to be sharing that. Right. No, I don't. And I think so. So one of the sort of the formulas that I use are, well, what things do I want to be known for? What things I want to be connected with? What things do I want to be identified as being? Right. And anytime I find myself straying away from that, or even if I have to ask myself, is this a good idea? Then probably it's not, right? And so that's kind of the formula I use. It's not perfect. I still mess it up. There's stuff I'll put on social media like, why'd I do that? That was dumb, or but we're human, right? And I don't think there's a hard and fast answer. At the end of the day, it's what you're comfortable with as an individual.
I love that. So let's go back to a big question here. I love to ask people a big question. And for you, the big question is really in your title of your show, Audacious Life, your best audacious life. And for anyone that follows you, we'll have all of your social media profiles in your profile page. People can connect with you there. And you're a great follow, by the way. You talk often about living that audacious life. I've even seen some interviews that you've posted back in your, kind of your days when you were interviewing athletes. I've seen when you post currently about the athletes in the league that you're a part of. You relate that audacity, which I love that, by the way. I think I did a show a couple of years ago that talked about, the courage of audacity, and it's very similar to what you say. So here's the big question. What does it really look like for someone not to just live audaciously, but to live their best audacious life ever?
Yeah, no,
ever.
it's a huge question. It's a big question. But I think the starting point is recognizing that answer is going to be different for each and every single one of us. How I live my life and how you live and how Mary or Tom or Kate or Ashley, how they live their lives, it's going to be different. So the answer is very different for each individual. I can tell you from my perspective, and I'll go back to the audacious thing because it was something that I think found me as much as I found it, if that makes sense. I had when I sort of stopped and kind of looked at sort of my life, the common thread, the thing that appeared over and over again, is that every measure of success, every accomplishment, every feat, every win, every victory, it was on the strength of me demonstrating some form of audacity. I just didn't label it. I didn't have a title for it.
Right.
I just did it. And it was through the pandemic where let me go back. So the first thing the first thing that I did, very first part rather, was it was 2007. Okay. Now think about it. That was a long time ago in the podcasting space. Podcasts weren't a phenomenon. Now they're like business cards. I'm saying everyone's got one, right? And which is great, by the way. I think it's fantastic because there's lots of sharing. But in 2007, there weren't a whole lot of podcasts happening. And me and a buddy of mine, we're huge basketball fans. We're tremendous basketball fans. We love the sport. And being in Canada, we had the Toronto Raptors, but they weren't very good. Right. And we just but it was still basketball. We still loved it. And so if you think about it, we're two guys. He's a little Portuguese, little short guy. Me, this big bald black guy, and we're into basketball and we love it. And we're in a country that cares about hockey more than anything else. Raptors who is really the mentality, and we're starting a podcast. None of these things fit in the mold of success, if you will, right? In terms of, if you want to be a successful podcast, these are the ingredients. None of those things fit into it, but we did it anyways, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't stop and let the doubting and the naysaying and the negative thinking, we didn't think about that. We were just so enamored with what we were attempting to do. When we started this podcast, it ran for 5 consecutive seasons. And at the end, we probably had over 1 million downloads. And again, we're talking 2007 when we started this thing. I think, again, 1 million downloads today is probably like nothing. But, back then it was a big deal. And we had tons of athletes, tons of players that wanted to be a part of our podcast, that wanted to be interviewed by us. The Toronto Raptors gave us media credentials. So now we're in the locker room interviewing players. And I remember that we used to like pinch ourselves going, we're two nobodies. What are we doing here? Right? Right? But that's that audacious spirit, right?
Yes.
It was there. I didn't know what it was. We weren't labeling it as such. We were just doing what we felt was right and what we wanted to do. We didn't stop and think about it. We didn't stop and question ourselves. We just did it. And so, but what I found really interesting is that podcast, or being involved in that podcast, that set me up in all sorts of directions and gave me all sorts of wins in areas I didn't even know I was going to get wins in. And so when I talk about, on the strength of audacity, well, if I didn't do that podcast, I wouldn't have been with NBL Canada. NBL Canada wouldn't have made me the vice president of basketball operations 10 years later. Right. There's just all of these things that have happened that wouldn't have happened if that audacity didn't exist. So to go back to the big question, yeah, it is very different. It's not the same for everyone. It's very self-defined, What works for you, what's real to me is two different things. But the key in it, I think that for me, the underlying theme and the key in it is that whatever we're doing, we're being true to who we are. Because going back to our original comments, that's how you sustain it. That's how you keep it going. That's how you give it life, right? And just kind of roll with it. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's really sort of what it means to me.
Yeah, it's this idea of we don't worry so much about the how, we just focus on the what.
Yeah.
And the how really unfolds. You can call it faith, you can call it hope, you can call it whatever you want. But when you step out on the what, the how begins to unfold in the way that it's naturally meant to unfold. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And sometimes the way it unfolds, sometimes it comes from within or it comes from outside where it's given you on a silver platter. Right? But it's almost like you can't win the game if you don't stick your name in it, right? You can't. You got to put skin in the game to have any chance to win or be successful. So you stay on the sidelines going, I know what it is, but I don't know how to do it. So because I don't know how to do it, I'm not going to do it. It's you're not going to get yourself any further ahead.
So how does someone get past that? Especially, before the show, we were talking about the last 2 to 3 years for everyone across the world. And you recently traveled in other parts of the world and shared some stories that really the human behavior sees no borders. It's all been the same. Right. And so, really what I've seen, having that courage is challenging anyway, much less when we've faced, for people that lost jobs, people that are switching careers, people that are making decisions to maybe stay at home to raise their kids, et cetera. We could go on for days with how the last 3 years has impacted all of us. What it's also done is for some people, it's pushed them to a new level of courage. But for others, it's almost made them play it more safely. And so for those people that are hearing your stories, they're hearing the passion in your voice, they go on social media, but they don't quite believe you. What's a first step? What's a baby step? How can we encourage people just to take that? Because in my opinion, courage is very much like anything else. The more you feed it, the larger it grows.
That's right.
And how do you start feeding it? What's the baby food that we give people? That's first spoonful. Yeah.
It starts with a self-awareness, Mitch. Like if you don't know a change needs to be made, then and you don't know why you're making that change or why you're taking that step, then it's not going to happen. Or again, it can't sustain itself. You'll try and go, I'm not going in, and you forget, and you won't do it, right? So you have to kind of want it. The desire's got to be there, but the awareness has to also open up the airway, if you will, so you can take that first step. I don't think you do anything without it. I want to go back to my Audacious Living podcast. I started that during the pandemic, and again we all got hit the exact same way with it. At that time, I was working with NBL Canada. We were in the midst of our playoffs, which is we're actually on the verge of entering our playoffs, which is an extremely exciting time of year. And anyone that's a sports fan or a basketball fan knows it's an extremely exciting time of our year. And all of a sudden, COVID happens, and the rug gets pulled out from all of us. We're all experiencing it all at the same time. And all of a sudden, I found myself going, this thing that I love, this thing that I was looking forward to, this thing that got me excited and jumped out of bed to do was taken away from me with zero notice. Yeah. Zero notice. Didn't see it coming. No one saw it coming. No. And all of a sudden, you stand looking around going, now what? Well, Mitch, for me, it caught me so off guard that I think I slipped into sort of a state of depression. Yeah. Like I remember some days I was feeling really lethargic. A guy, and this is a guy with all the energy in the world and excitement and the way I live my life, and I was lethargic. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like doing anything. Some days I didn't really want to get out of bed. Like it was just really a strange place to be. For me, because I was able to recognize that how I was feeling isn't how I wanted to feel, that's how I was able to make that change. Mm-hmm. That's why I was able to say, hey, something's wrong here. Like, this isn't me. This isn't how I live my life. This isn't who I am. And it was at that point I started to sort of try to figure out, well, what's going on here? And it was like, yeah, you're missing this thing you love.
Yeah.
You're missing this thing you love. And so then it became, okay, so now that I know, so now that we're aware, what do you do about it?
Right.
Right? So again, it goes back to you got to be aware before you can take action. So now that I know that I'm feeling depressed, I don't have my basketball, what can I do? Okay, well, what else do I like doing? Well, I've been podcasting for years, and I also want to point out. So I did that podcast in 2007. That was one of 6 podcasts that I've been a part of.
Wow.
So over my course of so for me, podcasting is something I've left, come back to. So when I'm feeling this state of I want something to do, podcast, right? So for me, it was a couple things that went on there. That awareness of what was going on, knowing it wasn't who I am, knowing it wasn't who I want to be, and knowing it didn't make me feel, it wasn't natural, but then also knowing the things that I love to do. So it was almost like, okay, so submerge yourself into things you like doing. And okay, and that's what started the journey. Okay, I want a podcast. What do you want a podcast about? So then I became that soul searching, that deep dive into yourself. Okay, so what I want to talk about? Well, I knew that anything I talked about, it had to matter to me. It had to be important to me. It had to be something I was passionate about. Okay, so what do you love doing? What are you passionate about? And that's where that journey began. That's where that dive in terms of, okay, audaciousness. And it wasn't a play on my name or anything like that. Audley, Audley. No, it just kind of happened that way. That's why I say it found me, because I wasn't trying to come up with a catchy marketing, whatever, nothing like that at all. It just happened. But as much as we say it just happened, for me it was meant to be. And I know there's people that don't believe in that whole meant to be thing, but for me it was meant to be, and that's why it took me on the path I was on. Been doing the podcast for about a year. I don't know. I've got close to 100 episodes. Loving it. It's something that's a part of me because it's what I believe in. And so that's so we go back, that baby step. It has to be the awareness, because if you don't know why, if you don't understand, again, that people talk about knowing your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, you don't know your why, you don't have the awareness to do something different, then it's just not going to happen, or you're not ready. That's the other part.
Yes. And I think that's very important, talking about opportunity as well. You know, the myth is that we create opportunity, but the reality is opportunity already exists. It's just a matter of when we're ready to step into it. And that's a very different mindset, because, you know, I think we like the idea that I created opportunity because it makes me feel like I'm in control when I've done something.
That's right. And we're not.
No, but the idea of I'm preparing myself to step into opportunity, it really is a much more humbling kind of letting go experience, but it is the experience that's truly taking place in life. Is that we're, at the end of the day, we can't even control our breath, brother. It's like our breath could be taken from us at any point in time.
That's right. And you know, many of us want to feel like we're in control of everything, and we can dictate what happened, and we don't. It's it's about being, as you said, being prepared. I truly believe that we all have it inside of us already.
Yes.
It's all in there, right? And whether we talk about step into it or awaken it or unleash it or unlock it, whatever, it's already inside of there. And it's interesting. So I'll jump into how, NBL Canada, because there's an interesting sort of connection here. So I do this podcast, this basketball podcast. In 2011, the NBA goes on strike. Now, we're talking 10 years ago. 10 years ago, social media isn't what it is today, right? So 10 years ago, if the NBA goes on a lockout now, there's no concern about whether, where we'll get content from. We'll find content, right? Back then, it's not the same. Now, guys are eating for breakfast, what color socks they got on, what shoes, all that stuff. Back then, that wasn't the case. And so we thought, okay, well, there's no NBA. Let's pivot to this new basketball league in Canada. And that's what got, so I made that turn, and I joined as a volunteer because I was passionate about the sport. I love the sport, but I believe in what they were doing. And a pro league in Canada, that's kind of cool. We have our own NBA. Let's do it. And that's what kind of began my journey. And I'll never forget, a good friend of mine. His name is Rick, and Rick passed away a few years ago. He's a former golfer, former pro golfer. Had a battle with cancer, and he was sort of in his tail end of his battle. And NBL Canada was having a draft, right? And drafts up, you come in the room and all the players. And I was doing the job of hosting, so I'd actually go interview hey, you just got selected. How's that feel? And so I thought it'd be really cool for Rick to check it out, to be aware, because he's really into that stuff. I said, come on, check it out and hang out with us. And when it ended, the draft ended, I remember on the drive back home, and now Mitch, we're talking 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And the drive back home, Rick says to me, hey, man, this league is great. And you know what? I can see you running this thing one day. And furthest thing from my mind, not even thinking about it, not even like, really? I'm fine doing what I'm doing, whatever. But it was important because people oftentimes see, I'll tie this back to what I'm talking about, unleashing. People oftentimes see what's inside of us before we do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
They recognize it right away before we do, and it takes us some time to get there. So Rick recognized it in me, and I remember leading up to his tail end of his days as he was battling. He would still call me weekly and talk about, you should do this, and give me points and tips and suggestions and all the things that I should do. Well, and he passed away 2015. In 2017 is when I was approached by the board of directors to take on this leadership position. And the first person I thought about was Rick. And I remember for a brief moment, sort of, wow, this thing that he predicted, he's not here to see it. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, oh man, I really wish. Then I realized that he didn't need to see it because he already saw it long before I did. Right? So the point again is we have it inside of us. It's sitting there waiting for it's bubbling, waiting for it to come out. And we have to be the ones to unlock the door and let the true person of the great things that we're meant to do come out and go do the great things in the world that we're supposed to do.
And the value of surrounding yourself with people that act of what Rick did for you is what I like to call speaking life into people.
Absolutely.
And the value of surrounding yourself with people that are only about speaking life into you.
Yes.
And that allow you to speak life into them it's immeasurable, because the flip side of that is, and we've all been in this position, where it seems like everyone around us, we share a dream and they're like, oh, Audley, that'll never happen. You can't do it. Well, what about this? Are you worried about this? Where's the money going to come from? They're worried about the how.
Yes.
And we're passionate about the what, but they can't.
Yes.
It's just like when you pour water on a flame, and we have that internal flame within us. And so to surround yourself with people that are going to fan that flame like
That's
Rick
right.
did for you, it takes us to heights that we don't even know we can reach.
Absolutely. And oftentimes, and it's funny that, these people that are trying to douse our flames, if you will, they truly have our best interests at heart, some of them.
Right.
They're not trying to be malicious about it.
Good-hearted
right?
people.
And they're not trying to be malicious about it, right? They're really concerned about our general well-being. Right, but they're they're putting out our flame, and so it's you're oftentimes say that you're better off just not telling anybody. Just go and do your thing, and surprise them like everyone else, because you will in many instances have more naysayers and hey, go do it.
Yeah, I read a statement years ago basically that said, share your dreams with few. And make sure those few matter. And that's exactly what you're talking about but it goes back to that self-awareness, right? It's very difficult because you're right. Often those people are good-hearted. Often those people are the closest people in our lives.
Our loved ones, our families, and
our
so partners.
It becomes this barrier and this challenge to living our best audacious life ever. And it's really difficult when it is people that are. And then sometimes you have to make changes, and that's okay right. as well. And to have the courage to make those changes is really audacity at its best. And so let's kind of, as we kind of go full circle here and kind of start rounding out this first show of 2022, what again, I want to go back to that person. And the reason I keep going back to this is as I talk to people, it just seems like so many people are in that predicament that you mentioned in the beginning of the pandemic. And so many people are it's like a lot of people hit the pause button and they haven't quite figured out how to unpause what's taking place. And let's be
Yeah.
honest, we live in a new world now, and we're not going back to the way it was. It's a new
No.
day and time. Things are different. They're going to be different, and that's okay. So I want to go back to that self-awareness idea. How does someone begin taking inventory? Because I agree 100% with you. It all begins with knowing self,
Yeah.
with that self-awareness. So
Yeah.
how does someone practice the idea of kind of sitting with themselves and being
Yeah.
okay with what they see and what they find, and then maybe moving forward into a new way of living?
Well, for a lot of people, that deep dive, you're gonna find some stuff you may not like, right? You might uncover some things about yourself that you are like, oh, like who's
I'll
that?
guarantee it. I'll guarantee it. There is no might. I guarantee it.
It's true. It is like you're gonna see some things about yourself that you're surprised, and I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's also important to know where some of this stuff is rooted in. We'd be surprised how much stems from our childhood, and how much behaviors or viewpoints or perspectives start from we were very young. How many times do you just do things that you're like, it's just the way I do it? Okay, where did it come from? Why do you do it that way? So, right. So questioning ourselves, questioning the things that being okay with that. I think if you can understand and recognize that the answers aren't going to always give you what you're looking for, then I think you're on the right path. I think you're on the right path, because things aren't always going to make sense, or the answer isn't going to be what you thought it was. It's just not going to happen that way. So it's I think it's a process, Mitch. It really truly is. It's not an overnight thing. It's not something that you pick up in a book, listen to a podcast. Motivational quote's not going to get you there. It's an ongoing process where you're almost making a way of life, a way of, and as you continue that discovery. As you continue that discovery, you make it a way of life. You make it who you are. You understand that life is about growing and evolving. We're not planted in that same spot, and forever we will stay. The other part about this, and I think is also important because it feeds directly into it, is our response to adversity, right? Understanding that challenges are a regular occurrence in life, and how we respond to that. We're going to all come into unfortunate or mishaps in life. And I like to kind of think of them as boulders, right? So envision this pathway, and you've got this big boulder in your way. Your job is to get past, over, under, through, around, whatever. But you've got to get to that other side, because on the other side of adversity is where all the greatness lies. So we've got to push through that. So as we're going through this deep dive, we're gonna discover some things that really suck. We're gonna discover some things that are crappy. We're like, oh my gosh. But you don't stay there. We're not meant to stay there. We've got to move past it, because the sooner you move past it, the sooner you clear all that crappy stuff out of your way, is when you can make room for all the goodness, all the things, the treasures that we're meant to receive. I believe that in life, we all are meant to receive goodness. But you can't do that if you're holding on to the bad stuff. You can't. Right? So, it all feeds into it. It all feeds into it.
That harkens back to a Martin Luther King Jr. quote: "The measure of a man is not found in times of comfort and convenience, but in times of challenge and controversy." That's exactly the story you're painting, is that it is in those moments of revealing. But that's the importance of practice, right? And I love this analogy for you as a someone who is so closely tied to professional sports, to basketball specifically. An athlete cannot play a game and then go 4 months without practicing.
That's right.
They cannot play. And that's why I love the word practice, because it is an everyday process. It's shooting the same shot 10 million times. It's making the same moves. So it's like Bruce Lee said, I fear a man who's mastered one move 10,000 times than a man who knows 10,000 moves. And that's the idea, that we're practicing this process. And the interesting thing is, growth happens when we least expect it.
Absolutely. We don't even see it.
Yes, it's exactly. And then we're in those moments of challenge, and we respond differently than before. And it's like, wait a second, this is different.
That's right. My son will say to me, "Here, take the tape measure. How tall am I today?" You can't see that, girl. It's just going to happen. I want to go back to the practice point, because so again, I'm involved with the professional basketball league, right? I've been for the last 10 years, and they're pro players. We sometimes former NBA players, high Division I players, international players from all around the world have come in our league. And I'll never forget, I brought my son, who at the time, he's 15 now. He may have been 9 or 10, may have been. And I got him into basketball at a young age, and so he's always been playing. And I remember I brought him to, the team was having like a little scrimmage walkthrough, and they're doing like little practices. And he sat there, and I said, "Come watch and check it out." And he sat there, and he said, "Hey, Dad, they're doing the same drills that I do in my game. And these are pro players, right?" Yes. It's the same thing. It's the same, that practice, when you go to a free throw line to shoot the free, you're going through the exact, I oftentimes say that the free throw is the most practiced shot in all of basketball, because everyone is doing it the exact same way, right? And it doesn't change. And so the more you continue it, the sharper your skills get. And that's so integral to how we find success. We sharpen our skills. We continue to practice. The greats, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, the LeBron James, they do the same thing over and over and over again. And they get better and better and better. And so, I think that's an excellent point about the significance and importance of practice, Mitch, because without continually doing it over and over again, and what that practice looks like could be very different, right? Maybe maybe you're reading, right? And you're reading different types of books. Maybe you're listening to podcasts like yours or mine. Maybe you're there's other things that you're doing. But whatever that is, it's sharpening the skills. And also, again, going back to those adversity moments, recognizing that adversity is gonna come. One of the expressions I oftentimes use is I don't have bad days, I have bad moments, because I can't let that moment affect my entire day. Imagine first thing in the morning you're driving to work and someone cuts you off. At 6 o'clock that evening, if you're still mad about what happened that morning, you missed out on a whole lot. And if you think about it, imagine how silly that sounds, right? 6 p.m., coming home, you're mad about what guy, getting cut off 8 a.m. that morning. It's silly. Why would you? Let it go and move on. So I think that's, and even using that analogy of driving, I remember a few years ago, it was a snowy day. I'm in rush hour traffic, and I hit this patch of ice under some snow, and my car does like a total spin out on the highway, and when it stops, it's facing in the wrong direction.
Oh no! Oh.
I was panicked, and my car, it literally just shut down. It just stopped, and the other car, thankfully, the distance between other cars was, they were far enough away where I could turn my car back on, turn around, and continue my drive. And as I'm driving along, I'm going, "What just happened? What doesn't matter what just happened? I got to keep going. I'm on the highway. I can't stop and freak out of what just happened to me. It already happened. I got through it. Move forward." And that's what we got to do in life. We got to find a way to move through those things as quickly as we possibly can.
Audley, this has been amazing. This is I feel like the conversation that we needed to begin the new year. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Mitch, and it's a good one. It's a really good one, Mitch, because I think from a starting point, as we look to the new year, I think, and look, I don't do the resolution thing. I never have. I just, if there's something I got to change, I start now. I don't wait till the new year to do it. Like, I just got to do it and move forward. But for those that do, maybe this is where the starting point is, right? Maybe the timing of this conversation can help. Okay, so this is a new approach, and maybe you just focus on one thing, right?
Yes.
Maybe I'll focus on becoming more aware and understanding myself better and what things motivate me, what inspires me, what excites me, what do I love, what demotivates me. Understanding all of those things, I feel, are on that pathway of unlocking who we are. Those are the steps that we should be taking.
100%. And you're right. Change isn't about waiting till the new year. And you can take rest and time to refocus at any point in time.
Yeah.
But for those that are seeking that refreshing, this is a great time to do that. And so,
for sure.
Wise words, my friend, wise words, as I knew they would be.
Thank
so
you. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This is, listen, I love conversations like this, and that's why I do the podcast. And there's such a recharge and re-energization for me. And sitting down with like-minded people, it's funny. I'll get in these conversations. I'm like, I don't know where it's gonna go. Let's just talk. And more often than not, I walk away going, wow, blown away.
Yes.
And just when you thought there wasn't anything left to learn or anything left to figure out, there's a nugget I walked away going, oh, I can incorporate that into my life. Right. So,
I agree. Totally agree. Audley, speaking of your podcast, tell the people about your podcast a little bit and then where they can follow you and engage with you.
So the Audacious Living podcast, it really is meant to be sort of a blueprint to how you live that audacious life, understanding there's so many key elements and so many aspects that contribute to how we live our best audacious life ever. How we respond to failure. We talked about failure, and I don't even think failure is a word that we use. How we respond to challenges, adversities, things like, understand what the imposter complex is. And how that contributes to us negatively, how to be happy, how to find joy. I've been blessed with the opportunity just to have a wide cross-section of individuals that just want to share their stories. And for me, the sharing piece is the big one. I'm such a big proponent of sharing, as you know, if you follow on social media, I like to share. But I think the purpose of one of the reasons why I like to share is you can provide such motivation, strong motivation, inspiration to people. You don't know what people are going through. You know what others are dealing with in that moment. And that word, and we've seen this in our own lives. How many times has someone said that thing in that exact moment? You're like, that's what I needed to hear. So, the Audacious Living podcast is meant to be that thing that people needed to hear in that moment. And again, it's a wonderful cross section of guests and authors and athletes and speakers and you name it. I really what I wanted to do. And it's funny. The challenge for me was I was a basketball guy, but I wanted to be a basketball podcast. I wanted to kind of break that mold. Not that we can't, sports can provide all sorts of great lessons, but I wanted to be more than that. I want to go outside of my comfort zone. Talking basketball is easy for me, but that's not what I wanted to be the lesson, if you will. So my website is bestaudaciouslife.com. That's where you can go and check out past episodes, obviously Spotify, Apple, all the usual, the podcast platforms. I've got a YouTube channel as well where all our podcast episodes are housed. I'm at The Odd Man on Instagram, TheAudman, not ODD. A lot of people confuse that sometimes. The Odd Man on Instagram. And look, I like to engage with people, reach out, connect with me. I love to share. I love to learn, and let's keep doing our part to make this world a much more audacious place.
I love it, Audley. Thank you again. Been such an inspiration, and like I said, I knew it would be. So thanks for coming on the show, and I'm sure we're gonna create a path crossing again at some point. I have no doubt. So
I'm not going nowhere, Mitch. I'm here, buddy.
Yeah, I love it. Brothers and sisters, thank you for listening to the Mitch Gray Show. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts, and we will talk to you soon.